Hi there, Coachman owners. Today in your 2019 Coachmen Freelander, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's Front Anti-Sway Bar. Before we install our suspension enhancements, we're going to hit our test course and we're going to see how our vehicle rides. Once we get them installed, we'll test course again and compare our results. We're going to start by hitting our uneven bump section here in our test course, and this is going to simulate hitting a pothole, and it's going to get us rocking back and forth. Any kind of uneven terrain or rough surfaces you drive over can make your vehicle start to sway, and that can make it difficult to maintain control. You can see when we hit those bumps, the steering wheel here wants to pull in the direction that it hits the bumps and things like that. Minimizing the sway is going to help you keep more control over your vehicle. And we are pretty bouncy right now as we're going over the bumps. You can see it in the steering wheel, we can feel it here inside. We're now heading into the even bump section, which is going to simulate a speed bump, maybe like going into a parking garage or an apartment complex. And boy, are we bouncing. You can really feel a lot of up and down movement. Even after we come off the bump, we've easily got 2 or 3 up and down oscillations before we finally settle down. Lastly, we're going to be going into our slalom section now, and this is going to simulate an evasive maneuver. And I really expect us, based on how bouncy this thing was before, that it's going to be pretty uncomfortable in here if you were to have to make any maneuvers. This is where I feel like our suspension enhancements is really going to come in handy out there and make the big difference. Oh yeah, I mean, there's even with just a little bit of movement in the wheel, this thing really wants to go left or right. I don't want to get too aggressive with it because there's so much G-force when you're pulling. It almost feels like if I were to try, there's a possibility that we could have a rollover. So we're not going to go too nuts with it. It definitely has a lot of rocking going on. So when we get our suspension enhancement on there, we're going to recheck and see how it feels. With our components installed, we're going to hit our test course once again, and we're going to start just like we did before in our uneven bump section. And you can definitely already tell a major improvement here in the uneven bump section. It doesn't hit us nearly as hard when we go back and forth. We don't have nearly as much sway. You can still see it hitting here on the steering wheel, so it is still affecting us up here. Steering stabilizers are a great suspension enhancement to help out with issues like this. But as far as our rocking, it has minimized it. This is still kind of a rocky boat. There's some more suspension enhancements that we could install on here to further improve it, but it is definitely a smoother and less bouncy ride than it was before. We're now going into the even bump section, and this is where we really notice the front bouncing a lot as well as the back. After our new components were installed, it does still have quite a bit here in the front up and down, but our back bounce is drastically minimized compared to what it used to be. We're now going to head into the slalom section where we're going to throw this guy back and forth and see how she responds. Before it was a little bit on the edge. When you were really whipping her pretty good, you really got a lot of G's feeling, and it just didn't feel comfortable here inside of it, whipping it too hard. We're gonna go ahead and hit her pretty good here and see how she feels, see how comfortable we feel now. Oh yeah, I mean, it definitely still has quite a bit of pull, but it's not nearly as scary as it was before. I mean, you can definitely feel it kind of pulling us to the one side, but where we were at before, without even going nearly as hard as we were just a minute ago, I was getting uncomfortable at those kind of speeds and turns. But yeah, this feels pretty decent now. Definitely does have some sway. There is still going to be some items moving around in this motorhome, but in the event that something runs out in front of you, I would definitely feel a lot more confident that I would be in control and be able to get around whatever we have and get to our destination. And this is what our replacement sway bar looks like when it's installed. It is a direct replacement for your factory sway bar, but it is a beefier, larger diameter sway bar that's constructed with a spring steel to provide you with additional anti-sway support over what your factory one did. Below our new Roadmaster Sway Bar, we've got our factory one down here so you can get an idea of how the two compare. You can see that our Roadmaster is custom designed for our vehicle and has the exact same shape as our factory one, so we know it's going to bolt up properly and everything's going to work. But if we hold them a little bit closer together, you can really see that our Roadmaster here has a larger diameter than our factory one, by at least 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more than that. And 1/4 of an inch of steel is pretty strong. If you ever tried to bend a 1/4 inch steel by hand, you're not going to, so you can get an idea of how much additional support that's going to add to our vehicle here. The benefits we're going to get from this sway bar are going to help you out in a lot of different areas. Whether you're driving down the road and a big truck comes by, those heavy crosswinds that truck used to impact on your motorhome, causing it to sway back and forth, are going to be minimized with this, reducing the amount that you'll have to adjust to maintain control of your vehicle. Same thing's going to occur when you hit any type of potholes and your vehicle starts to sway. This is going to help minimize that sway, again reducing the amount that you have to compensate for. So all in all, this is going to give you more control over your motorhome because it's going to minimize the amount of sway you have. It's going to reduce the amount of fatigue you feel when driving your motorhome because you're not going to have to work so hard to maintain a straight path and in control of your vehicle. This is also going to transfer to the passengers of your vehicle because it's going to increase the comfort of the ride because you're not going to be swaying so much, so your passengers won't be disturbed as much by the imperfections out there on the road. This way, when you get to your destination, you and your passengers are going to have more energy to do all the things you want to do. In addition to a new sway bar, you are also going to get new bushings, new bushing clamps, as well as some new bushings for your end links. This is all going to work together with your sway bar to help improve that sway. The new polyurethane bushings are made of a stronger material that's going to better withstand against road grime, UV rays, and other things that would dry out old rubber bushings. So you're going to last longer. It's also going to help minimize noise as they don't squeak as much, especially with our lubricant that we've got in there. And since they are stronger, they're going to work with the sway bar to ensure that we don't have as much play and we've got more anti-sway power. It's a pretty quick and easy installation. Taking your old sway bar out doesn't take that much time at all, and putting the new one in is relatively easy as well. You may want to consider an extra set of hands just because it is pretty heavy, but if you're confident that you'll have no problem lifting this up by yourself, why don't you follow along with me here and we're going to go ahead and do it. We'll begin our installation by removing our factory sway bar. The factory sway bar here is attached with bushing clamps here to the frame, as well as with our end links here to our lower control arm. Now we're just doing this on the ground. You can do this at your driveway at home. We're going to start by loosening up the end links here. We'll now take out our end link using a 15mm socket on bottom, and on top it's a 1 1/4 inch that you're going to use. I recommend using an adjustable wrench because 1 1/4 inch wrenches are usually very long and it's going to be difficult to work with, and a socket's likely not going to fit either due to the clearance on top. Once you get it loose, we can take the top bushing off and we can slide our bolt out. The middle piece here is going to be clamped tight in it, so we can just let that rest on there, and we'll go ahead and take out our bolt on the other side just like we did on this side. Now that we got our end links loose, we can come back to our bushing clamps here and take these loose. You'll need a 15mm socket for the nut and a 10mm socket for the bolt. I like to take one of them loose first. This one here, you can see the whole stud and everything came out. That's not a big deal if it does, but I like to just take one of the 2 fasteners and just thread it in just a turn or two, just to ensure the bar can't fall down while we're taking out our hardware. And take out the bolts on the other side as well. Now that we've got both of our fasteners loose on each side, we can go back and take those ones out that we had just barely threaded in there. And we can take our whole sway bar out and set it aside. We can now prepare our new sway bar. We've got it laid out here. We got the Roadmaster logo facing up. But what you want to look at here is we want to make it match our old sway bar. So if we look down the arm here where it curves, we can see that there's a little gap here because this is angled slightly down, and that's what we want to make it line up with our sway bar end links. So we can prepare our bushings now that we've got the correct orientation chosen. Your bushings come in your kit with new bushing caps. The bushings are going to be split, so we can open them up there. And we're going to slide it around here, but we need to put lubricant all along the inside. Now this lubricant here, some people do report that it can irritate their skin. Now, I haven't had any issues with it, but you may want to consider wearing gloves if you have sensitive skin. And we're just going to smear this all the way around on the inside. Making sure we fully coat the inside of it. And then what I like to do with the excess that's just left there on my finger is I'll just smear that excess here on the outside. It's not necessary to place any on the outside, but just a small light layer can help minimize any squeaks or noises that can occur. But I'm just going to slide it around our sway bar. And we can set our cap on top. Then we'll prep our other side the same way. We can now take our sway bar and we're going to put it in position. When doing so, you make sure that we lift up on the arms. It's okay if those fall off, we can put them back on here. We want to make sure that we get our sway bar above our tie rod end, so you can see I'm resting on it there. It's probably easiest if you get each side with the arms resting on the tie rods like that, and then we can lift it up and start getting our bolts threaded in. So now that we've got it, making sure that we're going to be above our tie rods, we can lift our sway bar up. We'll angle our brackets around so they line up. And we can line our holes back up, and we're just going to reinstall the hardware that we had removed. We can now prepare our end links. The bolt that we took out with the bushing on it, we're going to slide the factory bushing off, and we're going to slide the new bushings that come included with our kit on it. We want to make sure that the little dimpled edge here is facing away from the head of the bolt. We're then going to do the same thing with the nut plate that we took off the other side. Take the bushing off of there. We're going to put our new bushing on, making sure that that dimple's away from the flat part on our upper plate. So now we've got both of these prepared. We are going to be reusing the bushings that were in the center. These are the ones that were sitting in there. They just kind of fall out when we take our old sway bar out. So we'll take our sway bar end link now. We're going to set it in place, lifting up on the sway bar. Then we're going to take our large bolt up through the bottom and make sure that goes through our end link here as well. Okay. Once you've got it through the lower control arm, the end link, and the sway bar, we can take the nut plate with our new bushing on it and thread it on top. Once you've got this side loosely installed, we're going to loosely install the other side as well. Now that we've got all the hardware loosely installed, we can go back and tighten it all down. It's going to be all the same sizes because it was all factory bolts that we had removed earlier. When tightening down your bushings for your end links, you want to stop once the bushing starts to collapse and squish out. Ideally, you want to kind of keep it even with or just slightly past like the washer diameter here. So we can see how we're just barely protruding past it. We just kind of just started to squish it and it started to spread out, and that's where we kind of want to stop. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's Front Anti-Sway Bar on our 2019 Coachman Freelander.